Good morning, all. We're going to have a good talk today as things in Canada have taken a turn this month for the worst. I didn't expect media, the government, to get so involved in the Queen's Jubilee, but they have, and I am telling you, it's in direct response to residential school genocide, and the work's being done by a small team right here in Canada of First Peoples. It's Cross, Treaty Indians, Métis, and even into the Inuit. We're going through this. We're going through the Truth and Reconciliation from the standpoint of the International Criminal Court and the training I completed over 1 year of my life. Part-time, but I completed that with the former prosecutor of the ICC, which, folks, there's only one in the entire world at any given time. Now, they have a big staff. They have lots of competency there to help, but they literally take on only a handful of cases in the world in any given year. And even with that, folks, you still need to win the Allies. The Allies are at a monumental confrontation. But folks, that confrontation has been seen in the world since World War II many, many times. And you know what, folks? It's in those confrontations that we see today, as we've seen in history since World War II, where the most monumental human rights movements, civil rights for Westerners largely, happen. They happen and they get passed, and they come from the least expected sources. This is world history since World War II. It's happened more than 85 times in so many countries. The path that we've gone out on here, just a small group of us across Canada with so many chiefs who have reported children's discovered bodies. And I can tell you it goes far beyond the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We're already experiencing it right here in Alberta. And I can tell you there is a reservation in northern Alberta, of all places, who's been absent of a chief for more than a year and a half, where one man who in the reports from the Truth and Reconciliation has his name in one of those children's bodies, meaning one of his family members was one of the murdered children. And folks, unmarked grave, the grave found, that's in the Truth and Reconciliation report. 38 bodies between 1931 and 1971. Huge dates because it overlaps Westminster. Huge dates because it goes past 1945. And even more than that, it goes past 1949 and 1952. Why is that monumental? Well, folks, tuberculosis was absolutely cured. Cured in 1949, absolutely in Canada, 1952. The crown was turned over to Canada in 1952. There should be no mass tuberculosis deaths anywhere in Canada, let alone a 2,000% increase in Canada over both Russia and USA combined, who are in the Arctic Circle. These are measurements from the Arctic Circle, specifically Alaska and Siberia. There are two groups in the Arctic Council called the Inter-Circumferential Council of Arctic Peoples, specifically the Yupik of Russia and specifically the Inuk of Alaska. Canada's residential school children died of tuberculosis recorded, which they say isn't genocide, at 2,000% more than both Russia and Alaska and USA combined in the Arctic Circle. Folks, all the northern Indians, ceded or unceded, are not in the Arctic Circle. So how is it over those time periods from 1952 till right now today, there are Indians still dying of tuberculosis in Canada, let alone children who all went to residential schools who died at an unprecedented claimed rate. More than that, we have one bishop in Canada, one who broke from the Pope and turned over the records to this northern reservation right here in Alberta, turned over all the records. They're in French because they're historical in French. It's not a big surprise. The League of Nations under Great Britain and France, the most powerful colonials in history of colonialism, who are largely responsible for the devastation of Canada and devastation around the world. This group of family of colonials included Nazi Germany. It included Portugal. It included Spain. It included Holland Dutch, Denmark, and others, Japan. And there's atrocity in the wake of every colonial. Most people view World War II as an Allied Axis when the reality was Russia and USA did not enter that war because they were not colonials and they wanted to see the world transformed. They wanted the colonials to give up their aspirations of absolute genocide and Nazification worldwide. All the jewels to be given up. King George VI did just that. He started the process. He got very sick and he died while he was working on Canada. Now, in this month, which is the Children's Day of Genocide in Armed Conflict, where only one case in the entire world for all the First Peoples and Canadians was presented and sponsored by one Zhang Jun, International Ambassador for China, the one position of power of 5 in this world to see it through. And they did that last year. You can look on state media news. I still hold it. I have the video. I recorded that. I communicated with him via publicly on Twitter where he agreed to put that case forward, and he did just that in full sponsorship last year, June 28th, 2021. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of Chinese have seen that across their state media. It's not about whether you like communism or not, or it's not about communism getting imposed in Canada. It's about a world power ally transitioning us over Canada, meaning I got to step over Justin Trudeau, Jagmeet Singh, and the would-be Pierre Poilievre. Nothing the Canadian Crown can do about it. I'm going to tell you right now, the ambassador under Joe Biden, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, the ambassador Barbara Woodward under Boris Johnson, list goes on and on. Russia, we have Dmitry Polanski, Alexia Nabenza, and guess what happened? They didn't veto it. They didn't debate it. They allowed it to go through. So we've spent a year of our lives, a key demographic, again, of Treaty Indians, Métis, and of Inuit overlap, have all gotten together, a small group. We've presented an education that began yesterday as we sent to Albania, who is now the president of the UNSC for the month of June, leading up to the scheduled June 28th Children's Day of Genocide and Armed Conflict, which in Canada, RCMP were contracted by the government of Canada through all the provinces in the same overlap as Nazi Germany, meaning the SS police that were federal, provincial, and municipal and military police. They had the armbands. Basically, it's the exact same design as RCMP forever and a day, because Canada created that policing system first. It's the last one left alive in the world that gives a tremendous military police power in all divisions of government, meaning they can utilize upwards of military law all the way down to the municipal level. You won't find any other countries in the world participating in that Nazi-style policing system anywhere in the world today, except for Canada. Before that, you saw it in South Africa leading up to 1984, before the Allies had it dismembered and dismantled. Nazi Germany, same thing. The Japanese, same thing. Over 1,500 people put to death, over 5,000 convicted and put to death in Nazi Germany. This happened in our lifetimes, in our history. We still have ancestors alive, great-grandparents, great-aunts and uncles alive who lived through that time period. The numbers get smaller all the time. People are starting to forget as the generations go forward. But this was done in world history, and the promise of the Allies, never again. It was the USSR and Communist China that absolutely dismembered South Africa. South Africa, in Resolution 1514, if you open up your history books of the Allies of World War II, between 1985 and 1994, a 9-year period, the investigation of the UNSC that was largely pressed down by the United States. Worse, absolutely the United Kingdom, guilty as charged. And France, they didn't want anything to do with it because they didn't want to give up their colonial jewels, which are promises that they would. And they never did. Many were given up through King George VI, but upon his death, many went the other way. We're watching the Caribbean, South Africa transition. South Africa transitioned in 1994 to a full democratic republic. Full-on democracy, power of the people. That was sponsored by USSR and Communist China, Beijing. They didn't force no communism on anybody. The people and what the people wanted, the people got. And it was finally at the last possible time, USA, France, and UK got on board. And why did they get on board? Because of powerful NGOs and the world zooming in on absolute atrocities committed against South Africans in pure inhuman treatment. Inhuman treatment that is exactly what's happened to the First Peoples in Canada forever and a day, and currently going on right now under the Indian Act. I've tagged Brian Jean, the Standing Bear Network out of Manitoba, and residential school survivors. And I'm going to tell you, as of last night, CBC, if anyone watched the national news, has launched a full-on celebration of the Queen of the UK and the Commonwealth, Elizabeth II, and how great and wonderful the British Empire is and was, and how important it is to have a monarch, and why it's so good. Folks, none of your democratic rights and freedoms and system comes from the UK, none whatsoever. Contrary to popular belief, it all comes from our next door neighbors, the United States of America. Russian Federation, same overlap in the white, blue, red flag, Russia as it is today. Two powerful federalisms, one lost in the 20s, lost to communism, but has since regained that. Now, you may not like the one-party system in the federal division of powers in Russia, but that doesn't get imposed on you. It's what monumental achievements in human and civil rights through their federalisms that Russia and USA have delivered to all Canadians and attempted to be delivered to all First Peoples. I can tell you enfranchisement ended with USSR. They ended it. They've saved literally hundreds of thousands of First Peoples women's right across Canada for many, many decades. The achievements made in Canada, the women's movement in Canada, the First Peoples removal of enfranchisement only happened because of the world allies and the binding laws they imposed on Canada. Canada had no choice to accept it, or they would have faced the wrath of so many colonials before them in this absolute sick and perverted system. There are world academics. I have many of them. I've reached out. They are working diligently to deliver to this northern band reservation someone who can translate those historical texts that are in French, just like UNICLOS and every other overlap of the League of Nations. It dispels Westminster. It shows that Canada, under its crown, operated after 1931 Westminster, still largely in the League of Nations system, as a lot of overlaps are that USA and Russia do not belong to, but the rest of the world does, largely of Europe. And we've continued that way, at least against all the First Peoples in Canada, in full-blown, Nazified genocide. It's been going on forever, whether people like that or not. 38 children's bodies in this particular residential school. You've heard it in the news, the Blue Quill, and this is the Blue Quill in northern Alberta. Lac La Biche area, that's as far as I'm going to give the details. It's not my place to go and speak of the council member who's donated 30 years of his life to get justice and get the truth. And let me tell you what that French document has shared. 212 bodies, not Truth and Reconciliation's 38. It means likely more than 5 times, just in one school, 5 times the amount of bodies than what's reported and found through Truth and Reconciliation. That's just one. And I can tell you, there are 133 plus locations across Canada of industrial schools, residential schools as defined by the Catholic Church, Old Church of England, and other church groups, large church groups. Catholics are 48% of what's there. And then beyond that, there's hostels. It's called hostels, the term used for all of our Arctic overlap underneath the Arctic Council, which is Russia, USA, Canada, others, but largely those are the 3 biggest players of the Arctic. Russia and USA do not have anything like what Canada's system has and is historically. There are literally no resources for those people. You call the phones, you find you can't get through. It's weird connections. It is so much almost impossible. But we found a way around that. We found a way to get through. It's monumental, sad works. Government flooding through hydro damming systems, specifically in places like northern BC, where they wish to wipe out all records, especially in the unceded lands. It is likely 5 times the numbers that are reported are going to be what is. And we'll see if the Pope is going to release that, but I can tell you already, the Pope's visit's already been published as I knew it to be. 1 month after the end of residential school genocide in armed conflict. 1 month after, the Pope is not going to do anything. And in fact, has picked 3 locations in Canada, not on any of the residential school genocide sites, hiding in major cities, off of any ability for any residential school survivors to make it there. Now they're saying, oh, we're going to hand pick where to go, and we're going to make it so that we're going to hand pick who can come. It's disgusting. It's perverted. The government of Canada is fully embraced with the church because the government of Canada hired the church. The church was an employee, and they all want to sweep it under the rug. All the corrupt archbishops, which I've contacted all of them, one on the national news yesterday. I can't. He is the devil. He's the devil. He's not of God. He's of pure Satan, according to all Catholic doctrine and teachings of that church and Bible and New Testament, Jesus Christ would not, and I repeat, would not support anything of the Catholic Church today and any of these narratives going forward. And anyone saying that they would is blasphemy against God, and there is no baptism that's going to save you from absolutely breaching willfully the 10 commandments of the Old Testament that Jesus fully endorsed. He taught love. He never taught any kind of genocide, let alone raping and murdering children, removing them from their parents, and horrifically maiming, killing, and sexually assaulting them and murdering them. There's no Jesus that'll come to you for any salvation according to any Bible. And again, anyone saying that, you're deluding yourself. You're deluding yourself like all those institutionalized South Africans who thought it was normal to remove the genitalia from a young African boy who drank out of the wrong fountain. Just one story. I could go on and on about all the stories that went through that investigation by the 5 allies of World War II. By June 28th, we're going to see how many of just 14, which is more than 2,000 bodies discovered here in Canada, and yes, largely through the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but not the end-all and be-all, does not go through tuberculosis, because they look at that, oh, it was tuberculosis. That's not murder. Well, it is when you have 2,000% higher numbers than your two bordered neighbors, Russia and USA, who are polar opposites in this world, as everybody knows. So why are their UN reports year after year so very close and Canada's are way out of whack? Why is it that when they did a Truth and Reconciliation in 37 states across the vast amount of the United States, it comes up with 500 bodies versus Canada, a much smaller population of First Peoples, much smaller, 10 times less the people, but yet tremendously 8 times the amount of reported bodies in what are supposed to be secrets. Why? Why is tuberculosis 2,000% higher? And in so much southern land area, fertile, livable area. Why? It's called genocide and murder, folks. And anyone not seeing that, you're going to find through Roman statute that we are following to a T. You're going to find it come out. And it's about winning the allies, the 5 allies of World War II. And I can promise you today, it's likely Russia's going to join in, just as they did with communist China all those years ago against South Africa. And if you think it isn't a big deal, if you think Canada's going to hide behind its UK master and go forward, you got another thing coming. Now, it's a tremendous battle this month. You have CBC running full-time, God Save the Queen, and how great the Jubilee is, how great it was that Canadian taxpayers bought a brooch to add to her collection of jewels worth over 100 million euros, just in brooches. Brooches. You Canadians are part of that. The slaves to the crown that did nothing good for you, never provided you any democracy. All the European ancestors, folks, and this is for First Peoples to understand and get right, because going forward, you can keep banging the drum and talking about how a world should be, and you want it honored in a time of oppression and absolute slavery. That doesn't fly in the world today. And like many African nations and regimes that popped up after getting free, just to watch them get sentenced to death, right now we're watching cases in the ICC where Africans are being sentenced to death. They have been since the 90s, over and over and over, because people want revenge. People want to implement a system of governance that doesn't follow human rights, a revenge, and that doesn't work. You can't slave a people to justify being slaved. Doesn't work like that. You don't get to commit genocide because you experienced genocide. It gets ended. That's the promise of World War II. And there's no getting out of it. There's no UN state that can get out of that. There's none. There's no example of anyone getting out of it and being successful. There isn't. And First Peoples have to understand in these different narratives, it's not everybody, but these people saying, I want it like this. I want this old treaty honor. I want to be paid for this. I want to be paid for that. I want those people off my land. I want them to be displaced. You don't get to do that. We can only draw a line in the sand and move forward. The settlers who came here under that first class system were all slaves on baron and lords' lands throughout almost all of Europe. They came here on the lie, on boats, a third-class peoples who were literally owned no property, had nothing, had to build everything from scratch. Nearly every European that came here with nothing, promised land. They didn't know the history. They couldn't even read and write. Most of them couldn't even speak English or French. That's the truth. It was a first-class elite, the same boat people who made bullshit deals with all the First Peoples. And I can promise you there is no example in the world since World War II where you get to displace people because you were displaced. We can only draw a line in the sand and go forward with what remains, which means not booting people out of cities, communities, and lands already taken. As sad as that is, I'm sorry, but there is no reality or any example anywhere in the world today where any world power would allow you to do that. No peoples. And those who've imposed it or tried to force it have all ended up sentenced to death, individually by the P5 or jointly all together in military operations. The same kind of military operations Russia and Ukraine are going through. And I'm going to tell you, folks, we're 3 weeks away from watching Russia take absolutely back all of Western Ukraine. That's a fact. They're 3 weeks away. It's almost completed. And now the USA sent missiles with the promise Ukraine won't fire into Russian territory. You think that's going to happen? No. And that's going to be the end of it. It's only going to speed up the conflict, leading to Russia's win. That's a fact. Anyone listening to the propaganda or any of the other of it, that's going back to Russia. That majority speaking Russians are going back. It could have all been avoided. It was voted through in the UN, the UNSC, United Nations Security Council, in absolute majority. And Ukraine, under Zelensky, decided to say, fuck federalism, fuck regionalism. We're a centralized government, and we are going to impose Ukrainian on those majority Russians. You're going to lose. You're a non-UNSC fighting the UNSC. There's no NATO to save you. There's no nothing to save you. And I'm sorry the world's going to go like that. That's how it works forever and a day. There is no USA freeing Taiwan from China. Never going to happen. Republicans and Democrats cheering that on or trying to champion that or con other UN states into joining that narrative, largely Commonwealth countries, not going to happen. Not going to happen. And we're going to watch Russia take back Western Ukraine. That's what's going to happen. Whether people like that or not, that is going to happen. This month, we do battle against largely the propagated media, CBC, night after night, reaching hundreds of thousands of Canadians, programming them to the crown, telling Canadians that it's normal to give your sovereignty away, telling you how great Queen Elizabeth is, who committed the biggest fraud. Mind you, she was a young lady, a war veteran who didn't know any better, and her father died before he could finish that education with her. She was too young, too inexperienced, and the crown power was restored in Canada. The hold of the UK financially over Canada cemented. I can show you through those brooches, like I told you, the maple leaf brooch that Canadians, slaves to the crown, paid for, a gift of no rhyme or reason to give off of the stolen resources, stolen sovereignty of all of you bestowed by your crown government to show her how much she loves Canada. She loves the wealth, the sheer power and wealth and genocide of it. Your Supreme Court is the biggest fraud living in Canada, a stamp by King George VI, re-stamped by Queen Elizabeth II. Somehow, even though in 1946 that building was finished, and from 1946 to 1952 it was only King George VI stamp who gave full independent judiciary to the Supreme Court. And for those 6 years it happened until Queen Elizabeth stamped a new stamp, apparently was Queen of Canada in 1946. She didn't ascend till 1952 after the death of her father. It is a joint liberal-conservative fraud stamp by Queen Elizabeth II post the death of her father in 1952. Read your history books. It was the removal of the independent judiciary and the absolute cementing, once again, of crown colonial power, the power of the crown over all Canadians, removing your sovereignty, breaching what every ally gave their and fought and gave their lives for in World War II, for freedom for all. And Canada, within 6 years, betrayed all of our veterans who gave their lives and died in World War II, including my great Uncle John, who is now passed. A war hero. He turned in all his medals, and now I see why. Because it's a joke. Canada's a joke. You have an elite group of individuals in love with raping all of you and absolutely genociding the First Peoples. No different than South Africa. They feel it's normal. You look at Crown first-class citizens, those Crown loyalists that the United States fought and died for in independence to see rid of in their world forevermore. And we watch Obama and his wife craft on the taxpayer's tit of America a brooch for Queen Elizabeth II too, just like the maple leaf. The Democrats swearing their allegiance against we the people of the United States of America, first done in the 60th Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II, found all that too sick. The United States, at least the Democrats, giving we the people sovereignty of the American independence and Constitution once again over to the royal family. Sick, perverted. The Democrats have to be put down. We see there are Republicans drunken with the wealth and power. We watched Obama's wealth go to $21 million post that brooch in 2011. It's sick, it's perverted, and it's continued. Joe Biden was his vice president, and now he is completely 100% with it as you watch the new Atlantic Charter 2021 against Russia. This war with Russia, with USA pulling all the strings, is actually UK using the United States muscle against we, the people of the United States of America. First Peoples, all these narratives you have, your groups divided on governance, and you talk about natural law and sovereignty and these things. It's called constitutionalism, and you can have, if you win a majority of your people in each and every one of your territories going forward, you can win that. We can give you the regionalism. We can give that regionalism to every Canadian in every province and then do a federal division of powers too. Or we can do it all in one shot for everybody in every minority language. But you need to be educated in the entirety of the world, entirety of all First Peoples and all their histories, in every country's history in the world going back thousands of years, by world-credited experts who devoted their entire life to real history, real legal truth, and have the publications and expertise because they've donated their whole lives in every minority language. All First Peoples, all Canadians should get that education before you even attempt to go into conventions, because many are lunatic narratives. Many have world history behind it to show you how it belly flops, and that which you think you wanted so much actually leads you into a worse dictatorship than the one you're in right now. As bad as that is truth. That is truth, and that truth is what needs to be educated to every Canadian and First Peoples, who are all institutionalized in more than 150 years, and then 150 years before we were even a country, of constant institutionalization to a lie that infects you, your children, your grandchildren, and makes generation after generation worse and worse. We're almost right back to square one. We allow a foreign power to take everything from us, including the souls of our children. When do we stop it? You can have your narratives, you can win your people in your different regions and cement what's called constitutionalism. That's what we're all talking about. We just don't all say it the right way or have the right narratives to get there, or we're in absence of fact and truth. And where do you get that? You get that from experts. You get it from politicians who let the crown go and start by saying, I don't have this power. I don't have the knowledge. I need somebody else to bring that to me. In fact, every expert in the world, that's the work I'm doing. That's what needs to get done. And if you don't think it's possible, look up Barbados, watch Jamaica. It is spreading like wildfire through the Caribbean. And in this month, this monumental month where the largest blow can be delivered against this corrupt system, you have the Crown fighting harder than ever for its hold and grip over Canada. Don't let them get free. Keep them financial slaves. Keep the taxes going forever higher, taxation without representation. Keep the unitary system alive, the full autocracy of the Crown. Let the few get wealthily rich. The biggest wealth transfer ever seen in Canadian history, as we're watching throughout Western democracies. It's a scam for a select few rich who are loyal to that Crown and that system that isn't New World Order. It's in fact Old World Order. It's League of Nations. Look at your history. Look at empires forever and a day. Slaves on the Baron and Lords' lands. Bill Gates and so many others, they're just barons and lords from this antiquity period not so long ago. Pre-World War I and II, and into World War I up to World War II. It's what led us, the people there, saying enough. Enough. And we fought the evil, an evil that almost triumphed and promised forever Indian Act-style slavery for all world citizens. We defeated it then, but it has come to rear its ugly head. And when do we all say enough? When do we all band together and say enough? Joining constitutionalism. There's only one man in all of Canada preaching it right now. Well, besides myself, but in a political position to get it done, at least regionally in Canada. That's Brian Jean, the only one. Just did a post about it, only one. And already you have dictators already in his own party trying to destroy that. The fear of transferring the wealth and power back to the people for the first time. Sick. That's my video. Get it out. Share. Credible, verifiable, and real. And it's the right thing to do. We're in a battle for the souls of not just all the First People, and not just for the justice of those children, but for the whole nation. An example, if successful, that can change the world little by little. Every little step we take. There are many who have narratives, but we all must work on these little pieces to move the mountain forward. Thank you. I know.